Here we go.
Hey, and welcome to the Mental Load Podcast. We're Angie and Caitlin, two millennial moms with 7 kids between us, brought together by our Spitfire daughters who have been besties since they were babies. Who runs the world?
Girls.
Yes, but specifically Caroline and Nora.
So, by this podcast, it feels ironic that we're moms suffering from the mental load, discussing how to change the mental load on a podcast that, adds to our mental load. Here's the deal. We're the first generation of women who saw both our parents work outside the home. And because kids are oblivious to how much work it takes to actually raise them, we naturally assumed that our parents split everything else it took to run our households. Then we grew up, got married, and we're like, what the fuck?
You know this conversation. You've probably had it with your mom friends a million times. It's the never-ending to-do list, the perception that you're the household manager and the keeper of all the stuff and all the things, and that you have a husband who's supposed to be an equal partner. Yet you find yourself feeling like 90% of the work goes unnoticed and unappreciated. You're putting in hours of invisible mental, emotional, and physical labor a week, and when it's all said and done, you feel like you're going through the motions of living while screaming inside that something has to change, and you're not alone.
The 4th annual report in the Modern Family Index series, commissioned by Bright Horizons Family Solutions, the longest name ever, shows that the mental load is real. They quote, despite the fact that 75% of mothers with children under 18 are employed full-time, 86% of working moms say they handle all family and household responsibilities. 72% feel it's their job to stay on top of their kids' schedules, and 63% have missed work to take care of their sick children.
More work at the office means more responsibility at home too, with female primary earners taking on even more household jobs than other working mothers, end quote.
But the mental load is so much more complex than delegating out chores and duties or telling women to practice self-care or take a day off.
We don't want a day off. We want our husbands to be more switched on and engaged throughout the day.
Exactly. So, how do we get there? How do we have this conversation with our husbands, with our peers? It takes a holistic approach. It's not just better conversations. It's understanding why the mental load even exists, the systems that are in place that prevent it from changing, and the way society teaches men and women to behave in relationships.
We're here to explore all of these topics and really dig into the small and large changes that need to happen in order to better support women and therefore families in America.
And we're here to bring this conversation to the forefront and help break a generational cycle so that as we raise girls and boys, they know what it means to truly have an equal household.
Catch us here every other week starting in May for Maternal Mental Health Month. We're fired up and excited to take you on this journey. Bye!
Alrighty, we're just going to keep this rolling. Someday this will be like a behind the scenes video.
Right.
Really wish we had recorded the Lady in the Tramp thing. That would have been really good.
Captured our essence.
It really would have. We should have recorded it the night we went out for margaritas.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't it?
That was a good one. That was a good one.
It was. Alrighty, so I'm taking the lead on this. So we're not going to go straight. We're not going to do like an intro, like a canned intro for every single one. So I feel like it's just kind of like, hey friend, how's it going? How was your week? Let's get into it.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
And whoever leads says that?
Yes. Yeah, let's do that.
I like that.
I think that works. All right. Alrighty. And where's my notepad? I'm just gonna...
Are we starting with Spitfire shenanigans?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll tee it
up. I wonder
if
we should start with Peaches and Pits. If our intro's, hey, how's it going?
Oh,
how was your week?
That does make better sense. All right, well, that's a mess. Oh, and I partner praise. How do you feel about that?
I like that.
All right. I don't have something ready for that. What am I going to say? Think. What did we do this weekend? Okay, we just had a busy as fuck weekend.
Yeah, same.
But I can work that in. I can work with that.
I'm still thinking.
Dig deep. We had good sex.
I mean, we had friends and family over, and so it was like...
I never can be like, I mean, it was okay.
No, we had friends and family over, so like we're the hostess with the mostess.
Yeah.
That's kind of our jam.
Yeah.
We love hosting.
You guys do have people over a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Alrighty, so about 5:35. Alrighty. Hey, friend. How's it going? How's your week?
Oh, it's good. Let's just get into it here.
All right, so we're going to be starting these conversations off with some fun little segments before we dive into kind of like the heavy stuff, because we want to be able to lighten this conversation up just a little. So we're going to start. This is something you guys do as your family. Is it nightly at dinner?
Yeah, so we do it at dinner time. It's called Peaches and Pits, and we talk about the worst part about our day, and then we finish with the best part about our day. That way we're just kind of reminiscing about the whole day, but then making sure that we're giving equal weight to the bad and the good.
Love it. Love it. I would really love to be a fly on the wall for Caroline's part of this. Is hers the most entertaining? Because I feel like it has to be.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, she has a hard time really discerning time.
Right.
And so, like, sometimes she'll say on Sundays, I'm so glad that Nora spent the night. And
right.
Nora spent the night last week.
Right.
So that can be a bit confusing, but we all just kind of follow along.
Right. Not in agreement. Yes. All right. So is it Peaches and Pits or Pits and Peaches then?
We call it Peaches and Pits.
But you do it in the reverse order.
But we do it in the reverse order because that's just kind of how we roll.
All right. Go for it. All right.
So my pits for the last week was my computer is on the fritz. Yes. And I cannot open a Google document to save my life, and that is on my very small mobile device, which is a really big pain in the butt for both this podcast and because I'm a working mom. But then my peach...
Very convenient for 2023.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't open Google Docs.
Sorry. And then my peaches was that we had friends and family over this weekend, and we are the hostess with the mostess, and we love entertaining. And so that's
your little peach for the week.
Yeah.
I would say my pits is whatever this like shoulder situation is that I have going on. I mean,
35-year-old shoulder.
35, almost 36. Maybe that's its problem. It's like coming up on 36 here in a few months. And it was like, I've got to remind you.
It's the coming of age.
You are officially like leaving your mid-30s and moving on in life. I don't know. I really probably what it was. I don't think I warmed up properly after a week of being sick last week. And I just like hit my workout and did something. And so I've had like this very limited range of motion in random spots and very painful.
Yeah.
So that's been
sounds terrible.
It's been a huge bummer. Not being able to take your coat off without wincing, but still being able to pick up your toddler. And I would say my peaches has been planning this beach vacation. So did I tell you about this vacation?
Wait, maybe.
The one where we got drunk and just invited ourselves?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So for listeners, my husband and I are friends with these neighbors. We live in a neighborhood. There's not a lot of younger families. A younger family moved in. We became fast friends. All is great. We go over, we play cards. Usually we don't drink a ton, but for whatever reason, this night, because when I showed up, Sam was like, I have already been drinking. So she was like, you need to catch up. And I don't know. Usually
challenge accepted.
Yeah, I was usually like, by now I've got better judgment than that, but I was lacking that night. So anyway, we got super drunk. Somehow at some point she starts talking about this Airbnb that they're renting down in Florida, which I went there last summer with a friend, and I've been dying to go with the whole family. And I just invited us on their vacation. I was like, "Ooh, can we come?" And she's like, "Yes." And we just like looked at our husbands, and they were like, "I don't care." And then we were like, "Yeah." And so we've got it all booked, and we're staying like in this fancy little like, I shouldn't say little. It's like this really big beach house, and I don't know. We've never done.
So fun.
Yeah, we've never done anything like this before. This is like a big a big vacation for us.
Nice.
So
It'll be so fun.
it is going to be very fun. And so I've been like swimsuit shopping and,
Ooh.
you know.
I'm not there yet.
All the
I was looking for more athleisure today at TJ Maxx, so.
still hibernating.
Yes, 100%.
That's fair. All right. So that's our peaches and our pits. The next section, we've got to like figure out some transitions here, but it's our first episode. And so we're just going to jump over. We're going to roll with it. And we've got another section called Spitfire Shenanigans. So brought together by our daughters.
Yes.
They have been besties since literally
like
infanthood.
Infanthood? Is that a thing? I don't
Infancy.
know. Infancy. That is a word.
That is it.
That we both know.
Yes. So back in baby room A, baby A, because they're close in age, they're about a month apart, and so have been together growing up, and they're like carbon copies. I think sometimes it is shocking to me when we talk about their behaviors. Even tonight when we were at dance class and I relayed the story about how Nora lost it over having to fold her clothes, and you're like, oh my God, Caroline's the same way.
Yes.
But like, just why?
Why?
And it's so strange to me that it's always the same exact things. It's like their spirit got separated and like just put into two separate bodies
100%.
and somehow have like found their way back.
But also that's a whole lot of personality to fit into one relationship.
It really
so that,
is.
Like, regularly shocks me that like all of that can
fits
fit
into one.
A pair.
It does. Yeah. It will be. I'm genuinely fascinated. I love their little relationship. So anyway, there are these two little Spitfires, and they're not doormats. They do not take shit.
From nobody. Including their mothers.
Including us. I tell myself often, I'm like, Nora, someday we'll run a company. Until then, she will just run me.
Yeah.
And that's going to be our life. So Spitfire Shenanigans. Little story is about their friendship and the hilarity that it is. So I feel like our first episode deserves a throwback to the baby A. Baby A days. That's baby A is the room that all the newborn babies go to. They're the non-crawlers.
They're the non-crawlers.
Right? Is that it?
Well,
non-walkers.
They're non-walkers.
They're non-walkers.
Because Caroline was crawling when she gained her reputation of the Binky Bandit. She didn't want their binkies. She just didn't want them to have their binkies. And so once she was mobile, she would crawl around the room and climb into each jumper that the baby was sitting in and just take their binkies from them.
Which,
like a giant jerk. It makes zero sense.
Was she a binky? Did she have a binky herself? Had she been weaned or something? And was that her issue?
She had a binky. Like she was using her binky while
stealing everybody else's.
Everybody else's. Yeah.
How very aristocratic of her. Wasn't there that wasn't there that saying where it's like all for me, none for thee, or something like that?
Something like that, I'm sure.
That's what that reminds me of.
Yes.
I feel like they've outgrown that slightly. I think there's still a tendency to be like...
There's a touch of it. There's
never really going to go away.
Like, it's the difference between a thumbprint and a palm print.
It's fair. So fair. I mean, Nora wasn't far behind. She had the queen bee reputation in Baby A. She was the queen bee of Baby A. And I remember it was Jessica who was like the teacher when we first went into that room. And so, at our daycare, they have these little crews and the kids kind of stay together and they move from room to room. So they're always with like this little crew for the first 5 years of their lives until they go to kindergarten. And there were two little boys, and then there were like these few girls. So there's this group of like 6 or 7. And the boys, as soon as they became like mobile, became very like physical. And that was not something Nora is on board with. I would say she's generally still not
on
board with like being wrestled or approached in any way that she has not previously greenlighted.
Yes.
So that was, I remember one day I dropped her off, and I don't know if maybe I was just missing like write-ups at the time or something. I got so many of them from Hudson from the preschool room that maybe I just ignored Nora's. I was like, oh, a note on Nora's copy, toss. But apparently like there was she learned to stand up for herself very quickly. Yes. And so I dropped her off one day, and like, everybody came over and they're like, Nora, and she holds out her hand, and Jessica goes, oh yes, she is the queen bee.
Yep.
The boys know not to touch her because she does not find that acceptable. And so she shut that shit down real quick. Right. And it lasted for the rest of the time
until
together.
Now. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Although she does have a crush. So maybe she would like, but it's on a 4th grade boy.
4th grade?
Yes. Have I not told you?
No, you have not.
I have not told you about Joe.
Oh my gosh.
Commonly spelled Jow at our house.
I mean, it only makes sense.
Spelling is atrocious.
Yeah. That's because English is atrocious.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But so Joe is a 4th grade boy who her and Talia share this crush.
Okay.
We're not, so Talia is another little kid from their crew.
Yes.
Anyway, they ended up in the same kindergarten class, and they both share this crush. And I asked, so Carmen pointed it out to me when I picked her up from after school one day. She was like, have you checked out the whiteboard? And it's all, like, I love Joe. I love Joe. Everywhere is Joe. Jow.
Oh boy.
Not how his name is spelled.
No.
And so I was like, oh, Nora, tell me about Joe. And she goes, I said, is he a kid in your class? And she goes, no, he's in 4th grade. So she volunteered that tidbit. Then I go, oh, interesting. Like, where did you meet a 4th grader? Because I was like, because it's not her buddy, right? It's not, they get paired with like an older kid who comes and like reads to them sometimes. Mm-hmm. And she has an older girl. So I was like, where did you meet Joe? And I go, does he ride the van with you after school? And she goes, no. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, do you see him out at recess? And in my head, I'm like, in what world would kindergarten and 4th grade have recess together? And she's like, no, we just see him in the lunchroom. And I was like, oh, okay. And I've been to the lunchroom, and like, you don't get to choose where you sit. It's not like the old days. Like, you file in, and the order that you file in is the order that you sit down at your table. Yeah. So like,
we have hot lunch and cold lunch problems in the mornings with like, well, I have to have cold lunch today because so-and-so is having cold lunch and we can't sit together. I don't have cold lunch.
Thank God we don't have, oh my God. Thank God we don't have that.
It's exhausting.
So Joe, she sees him in the lunchroom, and I was like, oh, okay. So did he like help you or something? Like, was he nice to you? Like, I'm thinking like,
you must have had
you must have had some interaction with him. And she goes, no. And I was like, okay, so Joe's not nice. I was like, so do you just like the way he looks? Because how do you get here? Yeah. And she goes, no. Like, that's the weirdest thing for me to throw out. And I was like, so to be clear, like, you don't ride the van with Joe. You don't play with Joe. Joe has never helped you. Joe has never talked to you. But you don't like the way he looks, because that would be absurd.
But he's your boyfriend.
Cool. So then she I forget how she explains it. Essentially, it amounts to she thinks he's cute.
Okay.
And so that's how we arrived at our love interest
in Joe.
Joe.
So Caroline's in a love triangle.
Yes.
Yes. So there is a little boy in her class. Mm-hmm. We'll call him L. And he has a mad crush on Caroline. And she regularly talks about a boy named Shavi. Right. And she loves Shavi. She loves everything about Shavi. And so a couple of weeks ago on the playground, she was telling me the story about how Lincoln kissed the top of her hand like a princess.
Wow.
And then he tried to kiss her on the lips, and she quickly turned her face.
That's very bold.
It is bold. And so he got her on the cheek, and I said, "Oh,
she friend zoned him."
Yeah, 100%. Girlfriend's not afraid to friend zone. So then I asked her, "Well, what did Shavi think of that?" And she goes, "Shavi thinks I'm gross." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So,
care to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So Caroline has a crush on Shavi, who doesn't have a crush on her. But then she's completely friends with Lincoln, so I don't know what we're gonna do.
Poor Lincoln.
I know.
Don't invite them to the birthday party.
No.
Gets awkward quickly.
Yes, it would. It would.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so Spitfire shenanigans. Clearly the need for another transition here that we will work out.
We'll figure out at some point.
We'll get this in I'm not going to promise for the next episode.
Yeah, no.
But we'll figure it out.
We will.
All right. So given that this is a conversation that's a little bit heavy sometimes, and also a lot of the conversation that happens kind of out in the wild, whether it's on TikTok or, on like in reels and things like that, it tends to kind of poo-poo and shit on your husbands a little.
Right.
Like some of the things are funny. It's sort of that, like, it's funny because it's true.
Right.
But then I see a lot that are just kind of like shitting on your husband.
Yes.
And that's kind of something that we want to be very intentional as we move forward in this podcast, that we might use examples of our lives, but it's not meant to like keep score. It's not meant to like perpetuate this trope of like,
right.
Oh, silly dads, like, you can barely tie your shoes. How do you raise kids? Like, yeah, not where we want to land. So in order to, I think, also help remind us too, sometimes as we have this conversation, that we do have really loving, supportive partners. We've got partner praise. We've got a lot of alliteration here.
Yes.
We've got praise. Peaches and Pits. We have Spitfire shenanigans, and we've got partners in praise. Yes. So partners in praise. I'm going to give a shout out to my husband this weekend. We sort of got thrown in. We joined a competitive baseball team at the sort of the last minute.
It seems like a super reasonable.
It really does. And to be fair, as non-sports people, I didn't know that competitive baseball season was spring deal and not a summer thing. So in my head, when they reached out and they were like, "Hey, practice has started. Were you guys interested?" I was like, "Well, motherfucker, like I was not ready for this." We did not stagger our sports appropriately. So anyway, we kind of, and like the why is, I feel like it always sort of comes together at the last minute.
Yes, it does.
Because bless those volunteer coaches.
Me.
Yeah. Not a thing that I could do. So it kind of all comes together as they get their assignments, and like, it's like playing telephone.
Yes.
So everything sort of came together. And we were sitting at the soccer game for Nora when we get a text message that baseball practice is actually going to start 30 minutes earlier. And so I will give a shout out. Normally that sort of probably would have sent us into like a tailspin.
Right.
But we did a great job of like keeping it together. And he was really great about being like, we're going to go grab our stuff. We've got our baseball things already loaded. Like we are off to the races, and he got him like to practice by 12:30, despite the fact that we were sitting at a soccer game and we got notified.
Right. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So with my husband this weekend, like I was saying, hostess with the mostess, we absolutely love having people over and having the kids as friends over. We love being that house. And he just always does a really great job of like seeing where the gap is. And so like, for example, this weekend we had some friends over, and one of the girls is a little bit older than my crew, and she really wanted to do some water painting. So I was like, yeah, sure. Like her mom told me that she was interested in doing this before she came over. So I had all my stuff ready to go. And naturally all other 8 children were like, we want to paint.
Can't let you have nice things.
Oh, okay. And so we got out the kid paint and we all sat in a big circle in the driveway. So my house didn't get covered in paint. And so I'm leading this
this art class.
Yes, this art class, who the participants ranged in age from 3 to 14. So you can imagine where my brain was. It wasn't. It just wasn't there.
Right.
Because I'm trying to keep the 3-year-old from painting her forehead while also reminding the 14-year-old that how great of a job she's doing and that mess ups are really just opportunities and all of that stuff. So while that chaos is happening, Jesse's like, oh, it's almost 6 o'clock. Somebody should probably start supper. So without saying anything, he just went inside, made sure that we had all of the things, changed out our water cups since they were naturally filthy, and then started supper.
Nice.
That's perfect.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
I did not know you painted.
I do. Not well.
I don't either. But I really didn't know you painted.
Yeah.
Do you watercolor?
I do a little bit of everything. I just really love creative outlets. Like, I am a big energy person, and so I like to put my energy into creative outlets. And so I love to embroider. But
I'm just learning so much about you right now. Tell me more.
My arthritis hands. So I have an autoimmune disease, and it affects all of my joints. And so embroidery does get a little bit difficult. But when I'm feeling good, I love to embroider. I just actually finished a 6-inch hoop. And it says, I'm a delicate fucking flower.
Nice.
And it's covered in like vintage florals. It's for my sister. But yeah, I love like painting and journaling and drawing.
That's why I didn't have to like work too hard to get you to do this. When I like threw it out. And it was like,
I was like, creative outlets, I'm good.
Yeah. I really did think I was going to have to be like, here are all the great reasons why you should participate with me.
No. Instead, she texted me while I was recovering from spine surgery and was like, hey, you don't need to answer now, but here's my idea. And after I came down from my Vicodin, I was like, yes, let's do this.
Oh, it makes me feel good that it was after the Vicodin.
Yes, it was.
I didn't just catch you.
You didn't just catch me at a good moment.
And then you're like, well, no, I've committed.
Nah.
All right. So what we want to explore for this first episode, which I think is probably the most apropos for kind of kicking this off, is really what the mental load is, because I know I have struggled to like explain this in the past.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just something that's really, you kind of have this idea of like, it's all the stuff in the things, like we said in the intro episode. But really there's so many facets to the stuff in the things. And so when we talk about the mental load, what we're talking about is all of the invisible work that has to be done to keep our daily lives going.
And the lives of those who rely on us to live.
The people in our household, right? So that is cognitive and emotional needs. And so this is something that, again, like it was kind of this light bulb moment as I was piecing this all together and thinking, I was like, oh yes, there's just so many. So the cognitive piece of it, which I think is what we think of the most, is it involves the thinking of all of the like practical stuff, like the logistics of getting us out the door to go to the zoo on a Saturday morning or going to school or getting to dance class or sports or what it's
making sure that we're on time too.
Yes. All of the like, let me start with where we need to be and walk myself backwards. Right.
Absolutely.
Like it's a gigantic project. And the emotional labor, and this is the part that I think is probably some of the most exhausting, but it's the hardest to put your finger on.
Yes.
Because it involves like managing and regulating everyone's feelings. And so this is something that I find myself doing a lot in our household. When I think about like the request comes across my desk on, Saturday at 7, can we go to the zoo this afternoon or this morning? And it's thinking through like, okay, not just logistically, what do we need? Water bottle, sunscreen, blah, 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 all the stuff in the things, but like going through and saying like, okay, if I choose not to bring snacks, like who's going to feel what about that,
Yeah.
including my husband, and then like how does that impact? So if I go with the bold play of no snacks, and then I say we're not buying the expensive as shit snacks,
right?
What, like, how long do we have
That's
at the
a death
zoo?
sentence.
That is a death
sentence.
No one would ever do that.
Nobody.
I would never show up at the zoo without snacks. Or at least
I can barely go on a car ride without snacks.
Right.
And daycare is a 7-minute drive.
Right. I have to snack to like bring myself up to my kids' level just to pick them up. So it's that emotional regulation. It's thinking through how everyone, including my partner, is going to feel about this.
Yes.
Like, is it going to be annoying? Is it going to be exciting? Like all of the things. And that to me is what like, as somebody, I generally think of myself as like pretty empathetic. Like I tend to absorb.
A spongy.
Yes. I like absorb all of that stuff. And so like, I am feeling 5 people's emotions at one time. And that's the part that is draining. And then having to figure out, okay, how am I going to like get all the kids there and then get my husband there as well?
Yes.
So that we can all have a good time.
Right.
Whereas I don't know that that's something that like, you know, like he'll have really great ideas. Like on the weekends, he'll be like, let's go to the farmer's market and then go to the Jean Leahy Mall and like,
and do all the things,
bum around. And like, we're off, right? Like, you know, there's not, and like, and if somebody like talks shit, he's like, oh, do you want to stay home by yourself? Like, I don't care. Like, this isn't up for negotiation.
Right.
Like, we're doing something fun and you can either think it's fun or you can be a shit the whole time and then we can all be miserable. Whereas I feel like we tend to think of it a little bit more nuanced.
Absolutely. Because I mean, one like bad emotion, just like us, we are sponges, but so are our children. Like example tonight, Caroline was in a fantastic mood.
Yes, she came in so great.
She came in happy. She was raring to go. However, Nora fell asleep on the way to dance. And so Nora was a grump. And so when I entered in after Caroline,
less than a minute later,
to find, because I was stuck in the parking lot from hell.
Could be the pits. Pits of my week is the parking lot at dance practice on Monday nights.
Oh, bless it. But yes, I walked in and Caroline's struggling with her shoes. And I'm just like, what happened? This is not how I left you. How it happened. But then I saw Nora's face and I was like, oh yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And
spreading some good vibes.
We're not only sponges, but we're also like constantly reeling ourselves out of all of this good energy and vibes. And so that way they can soak that up and
have a great time. Have a great time. And so I think that part to me is what is really draining. But as I was kind of like researching this and picking apart what the mental load is, it came down to like these 4 components. There's the anticipating the needs. That's all those logistical things. And it's finding the solutions to meet them.
Right.
Which I'll save this point for a second. And then there's the making decisions part. So we've like anticipated the need. We have identified several solutions and thought through all of the consequences. Now we need to make a decision. And then we monitor the progress afterwards.
Yes.
So how did it actually pan out? Did everybody like enjoy the way that I thought they were going to? Were
the snacks
appropriate? Did I bring too many or too little? Right. I mean, well received. That's a crapshoot on any given day.
It really is.
But it's that monitoring progress. And so a lot of times men and women kind of both equally spend the same amount of time, like in the middle 2 sections, right?
Sure.
Like discussing the solutions and making the decisions. Like once it's brought to the attention of your partner, then it's generally like, oh yeah, like definitely we're missing football and baseball gear. It turns out that like the like secondhand helmet we got doesn't have the mouth guard. So like
we got to go
get that. And we have to have it for practice in a couple of days. And so like once it's identified, then it's like, okay, yep, we're going to go do this. We'll go do this. And we make the decisions together and we're off to the races. But it's those other two steps. It's kind of, it's the anticipation and then the monitoring of the progress and like sort of the like lessons learned that you sort of like go through in your head where you're like, well, that didn't work or that went really well or I would do it this way or that way. And then like checking in to see like, how did everybody feel about it?
Yeah.
How would we, how would we rate your experience with us today as parents?
Like an emotional hotel.
Right. But even thinking about like, okay, even if we don't check in, even if we say like, hey, we're going to let, like we did, hey, we're going to let you go out, Hudson, for 2 sports, which we have never done before, but you've been begging. Even just that like monitoring of like, is this too much? Does he seem like stressed out or overwhelmed or run down, like too tired? Yeah. Is this like too much? Is his body like not getting the recovery?
Right.
It's thinking through like that stuff.
Yeah.
That, that kind of sandwiches the part that we share that really kind of like soaks up all of the energy and really just makes it difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. It's very similar situations for us where I feel like it's like a risk analysis almost. Like when you're making the decisions, you're like, okay, but Jess and I can do that risk analysis together. But then once that's all said and done with, then he's like, okay, we're done.
We're done.
Like we made the decision. Yeah,
we've decided we're going to the zoo.
Yes, we've decided we're going to the zoo, and I am making sure that we're not going in the middle of nap time, and Warren's going to lose his staying mind, or whatever the case may be. It is that monitoring is what exhausts me to my core.
Yes, do you ever feel like if you just let go of that a little, like, I don't want to say care less about it because I hate that. I hate being told to care less about it. Because I think that's I think I should be invested in like the way my family feels about the
I feel
things.
Like that's a very, very fair thing.
But when it comes to like, I don't know, do you ever just wing it? Do you ever go, fuck it, we're just going to the zoo in the middle of Warren's nap time and we're just going to write out these consequences?
Yes.
But then do you ever feel like you have to prep everyone? Because I know like I find especially like Willa and Warren not being that far apart, I am constantly reminding like she's 2. She's 2. So when we're at the zoo and she's like having a meltdown because she hasn't napped or she stayed up too late or whatever, like I then have to sort of like regulate again. It goes back to like regulating everybody around and being like, okay, let's just
making sure that they're not soaking up too much of Willa, losing their goddamn mind.
Right. So all of that being said, there are a lot of serious consequences that this has on women. And I know, and we've talked about this before, even in our own kind of what happens to us. So first and foremost, it's women's health. And this is something I think has gotten a lot of attention since COVID.
Absolutely.
Because women started reporting in like vast increases that their mental and physical health was like tanking.
It was
awful.
Yeah.
I forget the statistics on it, but I feel like it was astronomical. It was like over 40% or 60% or something like that, where women were like, I feel like I'm suffering from depression, anxiety,
heart palpitations,
whatever. Like, yes. And then like the physical ramifications of like, I'm not sleeping, I am running myself ragged, I'm burnt out, all of these things. There's so much that comes from it just on the mental side of things, which always ends up impacting you physically.
Yeah.
And then, and I know that's been true for both of us in our experience. I feel like I have like I'm on a super low dose of anxiety medication.
Mm-hmm.
I've always sort of been like prone to that kind of behavior though.
Sure.
But it didn't really like escalate until after I had kids. And if they could have been like a little less traumatic as newborns, maybe that would have helped, and I would have been able to like, you know, just cope a little bit better or something. But that wasn't so. I didn't start that. Ironically, somehow I made it through all of COVID with a newborn. Without like, it wasn't until I stopped breastfeeding Willa at a year and a half that all of a sudden it was like the like tools and the coping and all of the therapy and all the things, it didn't work anymore. It wasn't, it just, part of me wonders if like, because I had Willa at the beginning of COVID, if like those hormones sort of like sustained me through the worst of COVID. And then like once
your body was like, she can't handle it.
She
just drive home.
Somehow, I don't know, like it compensated her. I don't know. But it's never outside of that, it has it did manifest itself in sort of like this like constant nausea for a solid year and a half. But I feel like I don't want to say lucked out, but I feel like mine has been relatively like minimal when it comes to the impact on like your
physical health. Mm-hmm. For me, it's a little bit more complicated I have a couple of different autoimmune conditions. And so not right at the start of COVID, I mean, I would say that I was like reasonably anxious. As I think the rest of us were.
Everybody was.
But it was the summer of 2021 that really like threw me over the edge, where they were relaxing COVID restrictions. And I have a semi-medically fragile child. And so that sent me into a complete and utter tailspin. And I've always been a huge advocate of talk therapy. I've been doing talk therapy with the same therapist for the last 9 years. She's amazing and I love her. But all of those kind of skills that I had with her and seeing her, we bumped it up to weekly instead of every other. And we've gone down to monthly before. I just couldn't get it under control. I was having heart palpitations. I was having, I just basically stopped sleeping, which was,
which just like adds a whole nother layer of stuff. I mean, sleep is literally like a biological need. And then when it's brought on by, it just is this like vicious cycle. It feeds itself. Yes.
And my autoimmune conditions are triggered by lack of sleep. And so it was like, so like I was feeling like shit all the time, but I was constantly anxious about everything. And so that's when I sought out help from a psychiatrist to actually get me settled into not pain. Well, I also saw my rheumatologist who helped me with my pain levels.
I mean, that's fair.
But who was able to help me get a combination of anxiety and depression meds that really and I really do feel like I have it all under control. We were able to get my sleep more regulated, and that certainly comes and goes. But I think that's maybe, I think also that's kind of a woman thing in general, is sleep disruption.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I didn't sleep through the night. I think this is why I was sort of reluctant to just start trying for Willa. It's because I was like, I just started sleeping through the night. I mean, Hudson and Nora were not good sleepers. Hudson had just started sleeping through the night when we moved here. And then obviously the move threw him off. And then shortly after that, we went on a trip, and then it was I swear he did not sleep through the night from a year and a half to kindergarten. I mean, it was, and Nora was not quite that bad, but I do remember at one point sort of losing my mind and being we are not having a third child, because I was I was up 5 times last night.
Right.
And it was literally just ushering kids back to their bedroom. But I was like, 5 times in the 7 hours
Right.
that I'm asleep is really
It's
not,
absurd.
I was like, it is not sufficient sleeping,
Absolutely.
and thank God Willow was a great sleeper. I really do think that, like, she was just like the best baby.
Yeah.
She ate like a champ. She started
Yeah.
sleeping through the night at 4 days old. Like,
It's because she was born during COVID. She was like,
Right.
I really don't have a lot of options here.
Truly,
I have to be perfect.
truly,
or they will get rid of me.
truly, I think God was like, we're going to make her real calm. Because again, I don't think that lady can handle it. She will lose her ever-loving mind if she's not sleeping and it's COVID.
Right.
But that was sleep is like such a big factor.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is sort of like when I think like the mental load started before we had kids, just slightly. I mean, we were married for a few years before we had Hudson.
We weren't even married a year before we got pregnant with Charlotte.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was fast. So Eric was deployed. I mean, he was the first 3 years of our marriage, he was gone.
He was gone.
A lot. So that wasn't even happening. But so we like kind of, and I remember having like some spotty arguments over like housework and stuff.
Totally.
I think I remember like very vividly standing like at the top of our stairs in our old house, our little like split level, and I was yelling at him about how our house didn't have magical fairies that followed him around and cleaned up after him. I was like, I am the fairy.
I am the fairy. Get you some wings.
Yes. God, that would have made it at least a little better. But so I know we had those conversations a little bit, but it just never felt like, it didn't feel like a daily thing.
No.
And then it was like, I think it wasn't necessarily the first night we brought Hudson home, but I think it was like within like the first week, I was like, oh, there's so much here for me to do and to figure out.
Right.
And like, I remember sitting up at 4 a.m. because Hudson just wanted to be loved and like snuggled and held.
Mm-hmm.
And as a first time mom, you're like, I clearly can't just put this baby down.
I
like
can't do
that's,
anything.
You're like, I am stuck, so like between like, feeding him and then like just trying to like, get your bearings. I remember like sitting up at 4 a.m. like watching VH1, which I didn't even know was still, you could still watch.
Yeah.
But when you're up at 4 a.m.,
yeah,
you learn those things when you've been up all
night. We didn't have
long.
the luxury of cable when Charlotte was born.
Oh, yes.
So I just had to rewatch Netflix. And it was in its infancy.
I feel like we still had DVR when we had Hudson. I don't even know if we were on the Netflix train yet.
Yeah, we were on the Netflix train when they mailed you the DVD.
Oh, yeah, so were we. Okay.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, anyway, I digress. But I remember like sitting there and like, I feel like my eyes were probably twitching.
Right.
And I just remember being like, that motherfucker is sitting upstairs, just sleeping. Just sleeping.
Yeah.
Has no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that felt like for me that like, and then like when he had to go back to work so quickly, after like 2 weeks, he's like, well, I've got to go back to work. And you're like, well, obviously. So now I'm definitely taking on all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like through any like fault of his own, right?
Absolutely.
I think even that night that I was sitting there, I think like he was within days of going back. So it was sort of like, okay, I'm going to try to like get on his schedule. Yeah. He's trying to get on his schedule so he can kind of go back to work as a semi-human. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be on my own. And that felt like when it started, like it collided. And then like within 2 weeks, I was like, oh
cool.
It's me.
Yeah, but I feel like for me it was the second, and maybe it was because Fiona was born premature and Charlotte was still so young, but like I felt like that first year we had little like conversations here and there, but I went back to work when Charlotte was 6 months old, but we were both restaurant managers. And so our schedule was already weird. So it was just kind of like, everything was too weird to be normal. And so like, I just accepted the weird.
Sure.
And so did he.
Right.
Because I mean, cleaning your kitchen at
Right.
4 a.m. because that's when you got home from work. It's not normal.
Right.
But it was normal for us. But after Fiona was born, she was born 6 weeks early, and Charlotte's 18 months old at home, can't come to the NICU, because she's not potty trained.
Right.
Jesse has to go back to work 72 hours after I gave birth.
Yeah.
Because he had to split his 9 days of parental leave between her birth and her coming home from the NICU. And so it was suddenly within 72 hours, I'm still wearing pads the size of airplanes.
Right.
And I'm having, and my love for children is split physically in 2 different places. Yes. I'm feeling all of this mom guilt, all while Jesse's feeling the guilt of bringing home the bacon to pay for this insanely
the NICU bill that you know is
bill.
coming. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was in that moment that I was like, how am I supposed to do this? Because Charlotte's at home. She still needs a home that is like functional. Right. Even though she's having family like help because he's back to work as a restaurant manager. So the hours.
Not ideal. Not family friendly.
Ideal. I immediately quit my job when Fiona was born. But yeah. And so it was this like, okay, I'm splitting my time between the NICU. I'm basically doing a split schedule. I'm not getting any sleep. I'm pumping every 3 hours on the clock. And I have to feed both my kids, one from my body, one from my refrigerator. Right. Somebody has to go grocery shopping. Yeah. As a restaurant manager, he's working 60 hours a week easily. Right. And so it was like this whole, like, I feel like with Charlotte, I lost the Angie identity. But with adding Fiona, that's when like this whole mental load just really came crashing down on me. Yeah. And that's when I started talk therapy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Second child
Thank you for that.
For throwing me into that. Yeah. And I think I don't think that's like an uncommon experience,
you know, not.
And I remember like when I was pregnant with Nora and we were sitting out on our back patio, like eating dinner. And I was very pregnant and like it was getting close. And I remember saying something about how I was worried about adding the second one in. Yeah. And I'm like, I was like, I'm worried about our relationship. I'm worried about like my relationship with Hudson, like normal things when you're like about to add on another child. Cause I don't think it ever, like I went through it with Willa every time you go like, I think the difference is you just understand after you do it the first time that you are capable of doing it. And so you'll figure it out. And I remember saying it and I was like sort of worked up and Eric was like, I'm not worried about that at all. And he was just like cool as a cucumber about it. It was just like, he was like, yeah, I'm not worried about it at all. And I was like, okay. I was like, I guess it's just me then.
But it's that because then we're set with like, are we overthinking it?
I don't think
have too much skin in the game, it comes to that.
But I think what I know now, being able to like reflect back on it, I was running through like, okay, here's what I do every morning to get Hudson out the door, to get him to daycare. Here's what I do to bring everything to daycare. And I was just in my head, I was like, I was multiplying the mental load that and all of the work that I was going to have to do. And I'm going back to like, okay, well now I'm going to have to like, I'm going to be pumping at work. So I'm going to have to like wash those parts every single night and pack them because like, God forbid I get to work and realize that I left a piece at home and I'm going to have to go home. And then I have to like stay later to make up that time. Like, because I was hourly, so all of this like stuff. But I just didn't have, like, I didn't even know how to articulate all of the overwhelm. Stuff. Yeah. I didn't know how to, like, go down my checklist of things and be like, help me. Help me. This is going to be hard, Right. And then I just felt like I had to figure it out. Because I was like, okay, well, if you're not worried, maybe I shouldn't be.
Yeah. But also,
I
people
feel
still have to get to daycare and work on time. I still have to pump breast milk.
Things still have to happen. And so speaking of work, I think that is another big component of like an area that is really impacted by the mental load, by women becoming moms. I think I read a statistic recently that when a woman has a baby, her earnings go down 4% per child.
Oh, dang. I'm out like 20%.
Damn it.
And I work for a nonprofit now.
But when a man has a child, his percentage goes up, and I think it was almost into the double digits, if not in the double digits, for every child that he has. Which is ironic because I did way more work to get our kids here. Eric always says that he contributed 50%. And I'm like, 50% of 1%.
Yes.
I was like,
50% of 1%. I love that.
The most fun part, you contributed 50%.
Yeah.
And then I did all the work. I made the human.
Yes. I am a superwoman.
Yes. So I think that is another component that we're going to be exploring a lot, is just the impact at work, not just on earnings, but on the way that women are perceived. I remember when I came back after having Hudson, I was struggling to like go back to work in general. I think as all women
do to some degree.
I was probably feeling it more so than, like, I feel like mine was probably a little bit more extreme, just kind of based on on a scale of 1 to 10, how I would rate my dread. It was well above 10. So I was struggling, but there was we were not at a point where like I could be a stay-at-home mom. And I get back to the office, and I was going on a trip through work, and it was like it was like a bonus trip, like kind of a sales trip. And so I wanted to be like super grateful for the opportunity. But I was like dying that within a month of going back to work, I was going to be leaving my newborn child. And I remember like, my boss at the time like pulled me in and was like, so now that you have kids, and basically it was like, here are all of the ways that you need to behave differently so that like nobody thinks that you can't do your job, because, and I think like she meant it very well intentioned.
Right.
But I was like, so what I hear you saying is that like you would pick your kids up from daycare and you'd come back to the office to like work extra to like stay ahead, or you'd come in on the weekends with your kids and just let them play. And I was immediately struck by like, and I sort of like stripped out, and I was like, so basically what you're saying is now that I'm a mom, people are going to be paying closer attention to like how I spend my time and like how many days I have to take off because my kids are sick or I'm sick, or, we all got sick in a row.
Right.
And, so now I am playing by this like new set of rules,
which is completely bullshit.
Right. So it was very interesting, like the perception of like women in the workplace, like it was very clear. And I felt bad like listening to her outline her experiences, because I'm like, that really sucks. I was like, I'm not going to be doing that. I can tell you right now, like, I was like, I am still entry level, so I guess I don't care if I move up in the world.
Right.
that isn't what happened or how it happened. But, I was like, it made me sad for her to like be like, oh, so that's how you like spent your kids' childhood, is like more concerned with like trying to keep up with the good old boys than like just enjoying.
It's the impression that you work like you don't have kids, and you are with your kids like you don't work.
Have a job. Right.
Like it's
100%.
impossible.
100%.
And just like with my scenario with Fiona, like we were crashed in the situation of an early baby and a toddler who couldn't even talk at home. And so what did I do? I quit.
Right.
Jesse and I had the same position.
Yeah.
But I quit.
Right.
Because that's
Yeah, what else are you, I mean,
what else were we going to do? Was he going to
You're going to manage the restaurant while you're just going to great tables and like, be like, how's everything going? While
there weren't those like fancy wearable breast pumps then.
So you're just holding them on, walking around like,
with
hey.
my hands-free bra.
Just wanted to check in and see how John over here is doing tonight. Is he doing an okay job for you? Don't mind this.
And highlighter nipples.
Oh, yes. Oh. Don't worry, they're not as scary as they look.
No.
So that, like, all of that kind of culminates then too in this other aspect that we're going to be exploring, which is the economic impact of it, because the gender wage gap literally exists because women bear children.
Yes.
So that is, I'll have to find this and I'll have to post it. It was this like animated graphic by this local company called OpenComp that basically like works to help create, to like close the gender wage gap.
Very cool.
And it was like this startling statistic of like the 17 cents more that a man gets paid per hour. Like if you invested that at the beginning of your career. So if both a man and a woman invested their, like, it was just that 17 cents. So if a man invested that 17 cents, how it grew, and, you know, basically like it is this like giant, like off the charts. I mean, like he's making millions more.
Right.
And then the women are still just like down there stagnant, just, like slowly
just
chilling, maybe getting a little bump here or there. It was fascinating. And the thing about, it's not just about the wage gap. I don't feel like the economic impact when women are not participating in higher paying positions, when they're not participating in leadership positions. You think about like our government, and especially lately, there's been tons of headlines of like women CEOs who are stepping down and saying like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just not willing to participate in this anymore. I'm going to take the money I've earned and I'm going to go do my own thing. You know, lack of diversity and in all sorts of positions, whether it's public or private sector, just continues to keep this going, keeps this system in place, because at the end of the day, like, white men benefit the most from the 9 to 5.
Yes.
Like, you know, I also read something, I think just today, where it was like the only person who wants to go back to the office are like white men.
Yes.
You know, like everybody else is like, no, I am totally happy working from home.
Absolutely. And we're more productive,
and
turns out.
Yes, 100%. It is so much better. So the economic impact of women beyond the wage gap is something that we'll talk about quite a bit more. And then, you know, kind of dovetailing into that idea that you're seeing all of these high-powered women step down and say, like, this isn't for me anymore, is because it impacts our relationships. It impacts our relationships with our husbands. It impacts our kids, our friendships. And I think most importantly, it impacts like our relationship with ourselves.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say.
You know,
not just those external relationships, but like, you lose yourself.
You lose yourself. And I feel like it was not, I don't know if I mean, to a certain extent, yes, I feel like I lost myself. And then kind of, I became aware, I like tipped over into this point of like self-awareness through this like journey that I've been on over the past year, where it was like, not only did I feel like I had lost myself, but then suddenly I became very aware of the fact that I felt like I wasn't reaching my own potential.
Yes.
I'm helping my kids and I'm supporting my husband. And I have always been like, you know, try to be like encouraging and supportive. Sometimes I need some convincing because he is much more like entrepreneurial at heart than I am. So sometimes I need some convincing to get, but I try to be like, go, like, yes, go do the things that you want to do, like explore those parts of you. And then suddenly I like tipped into this awareness where I was like, oh, it turns out that I feel like I have limited myself. And like I have so much potential, but on a daily basis, I basically just like manage a household.
You have potential, but no bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what I constantly feel like.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I could be a better human if I could do these things and
Right.
explore these areas.
Right.
But like, that's not worth my kids
feeling
like they have zero connection with me, or my husband feeling like he has zero connection with me. And so it's like this constant weighing of,
it's the emotional, it goes back to the emotional regulation.
Right.
Because I worry about, are my kids going to feel like I spent too much time, typing up notes for this podcast on my laptop versus like making eye contact with them, or at least trying to in between them, like watching Descendants 4 or 3 or whatever it is. I don't know.
They're showing you their twisty trick 6 times.
Right. You're like, one time was enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Got
6
it.
more times. Here we go.
Got it.
Would love to see that. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, but I don't think, like, obviously I don't expect our kids to have, some awareness of like how I'm feeling. That's not their job.
No.
But it's hard when you like look at your partner and you go, okay, I just am genuinely curious. And I don't mean this in a mean way, because I know you think about me often.
Yeah.
And you tell me that you think about me often. You get text messages and like I get all these things, but like, do you feel fulfilled? Like, do you ever wonder if I feel, like it's just that genuine like curiousness of like, do you have the same level of awareness that I do about this? Or is this just a me thing? This is what I think about at 3 a.m.
If they're able to be our sponge where they can ring in and ring out the emotions, or if that's like, if they're capable of that, if they want to be capable of that.
Right.
If they have a desire to.
Yeah. I mean, I think I want to say that they like do.
They do
want to. I just don't know if it's that awareness that you like tip in and out of, where I think it's tricky, but all of these things kind of culminate because they all sort of feed into each other, right? Yeah. This is the problem.
Yes.
Like, when you have women who feel unfulfilled personally, who can't progress in their careers, who can't participate economically, who are raising kids who see this imbalance or like learn those roles, it keeps all of the systems in place. It's like, it's like one of those toy towers where like you build it by sort of like leaning and creating pressure.
Yes.
Like it's not stacked nice and neat. No. Like it all is sort of like leaning and it's sort of like precariously put together. And they all sort of feed each other. And like, once you put that last piece into place, you can't take it out. Like it's locked in. Yeah, and so like, you've got to really work to like dismantle every part of the system sort of simultaneously to make any kind of progress.
That sounds hard.
It does sound hard. Good for us. We signed ourselves up for it.
We
so
did.
Lucky us. But I think, to kind of put a bow on this, we want there to be like sort of this macro and micro view of it. I want people to be able to listen. I want women, I want moms to be able to listen and say, okay, I feel like there's something actionable I can do today. You gave me a good line, or you gave me a good tool to maybe start in my household, right? But at the same time, recognize that we also have the responsibility to kind of lift each other up and help change the system for everybody's benefits. And there is much to be gained from this from dads as well, right? There are closer connections with their spouses, with their kids. There is more to it than just saying like, I want to make this better for women. Yeah. Our children and our husbands have a lot to gain from it as well.
Absolutely. Because we're a family unit. And so like, if one of us isn't healthy, then the rest of us aren't.
Right, right. So it's going to be fun. I feel like we've got a lot of great,
Yeah, I'm super excited.
great conversations teed up. So we're going to be here every other week starting in May, and we're going to see how it goes. Maybe if this takes off and and people love it and they want more of it, maybe we can bump it up to weekly. But the every other week right now, I think feels sustainable for
Right.
us. Like that was important to us going into this project to say, how can we make this as two moms that are very busy, sustainable? So that's kind of where we're going to start. So if as you're listening and if you like what we're doing, share it, talk about it, hit that subscribe button. That's extremely helpful for us. And if you want to hear more, if you think this is a conversation that needs to be had more often, I would say leave us a comment.
Yeah.
We didn't even set up social media channels.
Nope, we sure didn't.
But I mean, I kind of didn't want to at first.
Right.
You could email us. You could email. I'll say this. I'll put my email in the chat. Make sure you put podcast in the title because I'm horrible at checking my email.
Oh, I'm a freak about checking my email.
Okay, I'm gonna put Angie's email. I'm gonna put Angie's email.
I can't stand notifications.
Oh, I read my notification as I come in, and then I consider that good enough.
Oh yeah, no,
I don't actually go look at the email.
No, I will stop anything to run through that notification.
Okay, well, I'm gonna know that now.
I told you action items.
Yes, well, but now I feel bad sending you things in the middle of the workday.
No, you don't need to.
All right, Angie's email in the show notes. If you want to hear more, if you have ideas about how this conversation can be more inclusive, how we can, any topics that you want us to explore, those are the things that we want to hear. So we plan to do an initial run of 13 or 14 shows kind of every other week and sort of gauge where we're at and go from there.
Yeah.
And hopefully people love it and this becomes like a thing.
I would love it to be a thing. If not, we're just going to keep having these conversations off
and
mic.
We'll just be publishing them anyway. Then you'll just get recordings of us drinking margaritas on Friday nights.
Yes.
All right. Bye, friend.
Bye.